Hi guys, it's Mariel Gardiner here again with Accepting Therapy LLC. And this week I'm here with Colleen Paul, another one of our amazing therapists. Hi Colleen.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Hanging in there, hanging out in the burbs,
Yeah.
chilling out,
Sweating a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I am.
Same.
Well, let's jump right in. We have a few questions to ask. And because you're a therapist, this is one of my favorite questions to ask everybody. But what made you join mental health and what made you pursue a career in this field?
Yeah. For me, I would say I always knew I wanted to do a profession that was in the helping realm. I didn't really know exactly what that looked like, and it definitely took me a while to figure out what that would look like. I got my undergrad in film studies with a minor in Spanish and creative writing, so
I like that.
not related at all.
Sure.
But I do laugh because looking back, I think my hobbies and the things that I were doing during college and jobs and everything is what really ignited that passion for me and helping people. So I volunteered for a group called Peer Health Exchange with a couple of friends. We just thought it would be a great opportunity to practice speaking skills. And obviously it was, a nice way to go in and help kids in inner city schools. So that was something that piqued my interest as well. So I just went in, and depending on what the subject was, we would teach them things about healthy relationships, abusive relationships, like anything related to drugs and alcohol and healthy sex practices, all of that. And I really loved doing that. And I think that says a lot as a sophomore in college and having to get up extremely early on the weekends and going in and having these
Yeah.
kids hate me and basically the stranger coming in and teaching them these things, and they're like, why are you here?
Yeah.
I really loved that, and I took a lot away from that experience, and especially that age range. I think that was what made me realize I really loved working with adolescents.
Mhm.
And it was so rewarding. Like, even though there were some classes you go in and they would just not listen to a single word I said, they would get into discussions and everything. But what really made that experience so rewarding were just the people that would come up to me afterwards and share their stories and say, I'm going through this with my mom or my dad. I really want to work on this relationship. Can you help me? And that's what struck me. And then I also worked in Pilsen at an elementary school. I was a tutor for like 3 to 6 months. I can't remember the exact timeline. And I helped those kids with their verbal and reading skills, and just the personal connections I made with those kids as well, I think was what I took away from that experience. It wasn't so much the tutoring itself, it was just the human to human interaction. So worked in daycare for a couple of years after undergrad. Again, it was more just that rapport that I had with the kids more than anything that really stuck with me. And so a couple of years ago, I was just like, okay, I need to do something in mental health. Do I look into psychology, psychiatry, counseling? And I just sort of listed them all out, the pros and cons of each, and just everything that was under counseling just really struck me as like, yeah, that is what I want to do. This is it right here.
Yeah, and I think that's so true for a lot of us that we start to realize that you have like a natural ability for it and like connection. We love building rapport, meeting people, hearing their stories, being able to help and support in that way. So it sounds like you found the right fit.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. So started school, and then it was just like, it was such a click. And I'm really glad I chose counseling, because I think out of everything that I could have chosen, it just feels the most in my ballpark. It's not the same. You know what I mean?
Sure, fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, and moving right along. Next question. How does cultural humility impact your practice?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
I think it does a lot. I was really, really excited. And I know that's kind of a weird term to use with talking about cultural competence, cultural humility, to get into that subject in grad school. And I think any of my friends know in school, and anybody that will listen, I didn't have a good experience in my cultural diversity class. And so that ignited a flame in me, and I wanted to know more, because a lot of the readings that we did at that time about white fragility and intersectionality, those were things, I mean, due to my privilege growing up, either class wise or, skin color wise, it had only been a couple years, within the last decade, that was really on my radar.
Mhm.
And with counseling, I think it's a profession where you really have to take a look at yourself before you can even begin to take a look at your clients. And that was something that I had to do with cultural humility, where I had to
Absolutely.
not only navigate my way as a counselor in understanding each client's experience, whether it is a difference in sexuality, race, ethnicity, gender, all of those things. Um, I had to become so-called competent in that, which I think arguably no one is going to be 100% competent in that. I think that's something that I really support and strive for, is that I am never going to reach a cap on that. I think
Absolutely.
if I do, then I'm not doing the right thing,
Yeah.
because the world is ever changing. People are ever changing. So I'm just always going to have to constantly educate myself.
Mhm.
And I think with the humility part, it's more about taking a look at myself and seeing in what ways I may have been complacent with the dominant culture. And based on who I am as a person, how have I been um, a participant in that, for lack of a better word? So, yeah, just always remaining curious with clients is big with me, and never assuming, and just being there to be corrected, I think, is big.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I never like want to come across as a higher up, like I know everything that you're going through. Like, no, I don't. You spend an hour with me once a week. Like, I don't understand what your life is like, so I'm here to support you if that's what the topic of conversation is. And with that, never assuming that that identity, that part of themselves, is what the topic of conversation is going to be. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you said about, needing to learn about ourselves and how we're showing up in the room, in our identities, how that's impacting our clients, and always being curious, never making assumptions, because, everyone that comes in is going to have a different experience within those identities too. So, yes, definitely a lifelong journey, I think, as
For sure.
working professionals. So, yeah, cool. And what is your approach to therapy? How would you describe that?
Um, I think it's really cliche. Well, I think a lot of therapists will say, like, I'm eclectic.
Sure.
But I mean, it's true. I think it's hard to be like, this is my dominant framework for every single client, and it works for every single client.
Yeah.
I think it really does need to adjust depending on the person, the place, the time, environment. I do think it's important for me to look at a person's past. I really do think a past has a big influence on a person's present and future. And I am a little of a bit of an existentialist as well. I think
I
it's
love that.
yeah, important to create, I think, especially right now, what with everything going on in the pandemic, where it feels like there's not a lot of meaning in our lives. How can I create meaning out of this experience? So that has always been one that I've vibed with. And I notice that in a lot of my sessions nowadays, I bring that up a lot. Um, and then also just humanistic. I just think that's somewhat of an easy route to go down. It's just very person centered, meeting the person where they're at. I never, again, I sort of said this in the last question, but I don't want to come across as this person of authority or power. I really value an egalitarian relationship. I always say in my intake with clients that our relationship breaks social norms, that
Mhm.
you can't really readily go to a friend. I mean, you can, depending on the friend, and be like, hey, our interactions are kind of weird. Can we shift what we talked about last week in this next hour that we talk? But with me, I encourage that. Be like, I notice 20 minutes in, if you're not into the topic of conversation, my feelings are not going to be hurt if you're like, hey, this is not what I want to talk about today.
Sure.
Or if you need to correct me, go for it. That this space is for the client. It's not for me. And I think just being really purposeful of that with my responses as well. So I think like the big bad skill of self-disclosure is knowing, is that self-disclosure from my client or is it to put myself at ease?
Sure.
Yeah, so that's a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds awesome. I definitely vibe with a lot of those things too. And I think, you don't come across therapists that are, really like strong in any one field so much anymore, because we are often working with clients that need different things from us. So
Right.
with every person, we're approaching it a little bit differently. And I think that's a good thing for sure.
Yeah.
And I really want Viktor Frankl to be my best friend. So that's a side note, but
I
yeah.
was going to bring him up, but I was like, I don't want to throw out any names.
Maybe somebody knows who we're talking about, maybe not, but that's the other reason that, I think doing these types of interviews and just in general, demystifying the process of therapy, we're not here to give you all the answers or be this kind of stoic person in the room, but to just meet you as another human being.
Right. 100%.
Well, what about clients that typically seek you out? Can you tell me about who you work with generally?
I would say for the most part, I work with younger adults, so 20 to 25. But there, then you sort of have the outliers outside of that. But for the most part, I'm around that age range, and anxiety, a lot of the times depressive symptoms, adjustment, especially right now, I've noticed over the last couple of months getting an influx with that, just being like, hey, we're in a pandemic, can I talk? It's like, yeah, I get it. So yeah, I think that's, if I had to pick the two main things that I normally see in my sessions, that's what pops up. And with sprinkles of other things, whether that is eating disorders or OCD tendencies. Sometimes I can get things around that. I think control right now is hard with being kept indoors as well. So I have noticed that a lot of in a lot of my clients that are struggling at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So it sounds like you see a good, range of clients. And I think I typically see a lot of that age range too. I think that's who I attract because I appear young, which isn't a bad thing, but yeah. So, and so do you, we're spry chickens. So cool. Well, moving on to our last question. What would you say to a client who's maybe hesitant to reach out to therapy?
Just do it. No, just do it. No, and I completely get it. I think, unfortunately, there is still so much stigma on mental health. And I don't think it's surprising considering our last administration why that is. But, I don't need to get political with all of that, but I do think that that is definitely going to be a backtrack for some people, I think, in the last couple of years. And I always tell friends, family, people that ask about it, that it doesn't mean you have to have some debilitating mental health disorder to go to therapy. If you just want to go and talk about what your interpersonal relationships are looking right now that are very much going to be impacted by being in isolation and not being able to travel and not being able to see family, all of that. If you just want to come and talk about that, adjustments, as I said, with a lot of what my clients are going through right now, whether that's starting college and having everything have to be online and starting a new job, just wanting to go and have someone that's not biased and you can just share whatever you want to share with them without fear of feeling like you're being a burden or, you're not going to be validated. I don't think it has to be I need to go because something is seriously wrong with me. Sure. And that means that something is wrong with me that I'm going. Like, no, not at all. I just think it's beneficial for quite literally everyone. I say to everyone, like, do it. If you're thinking
Yeah.
about it, just do it, try it out. Don't stop yourself at one therapist if you feel like it's not a fit. Keep looking, because
Mhm.
that's your space, that's your hour. It's not what's good for the therapist, is what's good for you in that moment.
Yeah, that's a great point, that don't be afraid to shop around, as they say, because that's essentially the most important part of having success in therapy, is getting along with your therapist and feeling safe in that environment, you know? But yeah, cool. And also, my own soapbox, like everybody has mental health.
Yeah,
We don't always have, diagnoses, but everybody has mental health that we need to take care of. So
100%. And
I'm
that's the thing.
biased.
No, but that's the thing, is like you'll hear how readily people are going to go, if your foot hurts, to go to the doctor and figure out what's going on. It's like, if your heart's hurting a little bit, go talk to someone about that. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah,
Therapy's great.
absolutely.
I go to therapy. I love it.
Me too. I think, yeah, again, biased, but I think everybody needs a therapist at some point in their life,
I agree.
and accessible therapy, but yeah, cool. Anything else you want your clients to know about you?
Well, it kind of struck me when you were saying the shop around thing, that
Mhm.
that is why I offer that phone consultation before we even do an intake,
Yeah.
as I am not great at marketing myself or being a saleswoman by any means. Like I'm too awkward for that. And so I think it's important for my clients to know me before we actually go in and do an intake session and
Sure.
they divulge all of these things with me. So it doesn't necessarily have to be with me. That's not why I'm preaching this to clients. I think if you are interested in meeting with any therapist, that's something that you can and should ask for, just to get a feel, because
Yeah.
this is a person that's going to get a lot of personal and private information about you, so you want to make sure you're feeling comfortable going in.
Cool. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Thank
helpful. I think it will be. Awesome. Well, thank you, Colleen. Such a
thank you.
pleasure. And I will see you again soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Yes, you too.
Okay, bye.